Harry Potter is one of the most influential franchises between a book and a movie series that we've ever seen. It's impacted the lives of so many kids and honestly adults too, and I'm no different. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is number 100. So before I get into the nitty-gritty, the first half of this video is going to be no spoilers in case you haven't seen Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, so you can watch the first half, watch the movie, and probably the first 3 movies because it's the 4th. And then you can come back and watch the rest of the video, because I'm going to be doing a deep dive into some specific plot elements and scenes that I like, and I don't want to spoil that for any of y'all watching it for the first time. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is the 4th movie in the Harry Potter franchise. And of course, it's based on the 4th book of the Harry Potter franchise of the same name. This film is directed by Mike Newell, who you may know from 4 Weddings and a Funeral back in 1994, and then Donnie Brasco from 1997. And of course, this movie stars the Harry Potter stars, Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint, as good as always in this movie. And they're joined by a bunch of British thespians who I could just list off for days. It has everybody who's ever acted in a British film in it, and they're all amazing, and they all say nonsense, but they somehow make it work because they're incredible actors. So very briefly, what this movie is it follows, of course, Harry, Ron, and Hermione in their 4th year at Hogwarts. In this movie, there are 2 other wizarding schools that come and visit Hogwarts for what's called the Triwizard Tournament. And in the Triwizard Tournament, a student representative from each school competes for the ultimate prize of the Triwizard Tournament Cup. And so you have to be in your 7th year of school in order to possibly nominate yourself to compete in the Triwizard Tournament. And the way that you nominate yourself is through putting your name into what's called the Goblet of Fire. There's a enchantment around the fire so that anyone who isn't of age cannot actually put their name in there. However, conflict arises when Harry's name comes out of the Goblet of Fire, and he has to now compete in the Triwizard Tournament in only his 4th year. So we have this great mystery of who put Harry's name in the Goblet of Fire, and also, oh crap, Harry has to compete in the Triwizard Tournament where people have actually died. The Triwizard Tournament is comprised of 3 different challenges, all very physically demanding. One of them, you have to steal a golden egg from a dragon who's really mean. Another one, you have to go underwater and you have to save a friend. And then the third one is in this crazy maze that it's hard to describe, but it's just extremely stressful and not something that I would ever nominate myself to do. I mean, props to the people that put their name in the Goblet of Fire. I mean, that's some crazy stuff. I know it's fictional, but these characters feel real. This movie was very influential on me. This is the first Harry Potter movie that my parents actually let me go see in a theater. I remember I was 9 years old in 2005, sat next to my mom who loved the franchise as well, and I was just amazed by everything I saw. And this was the perfect Harry Potter movie for me to go see for the first time in a theater, because what this movie does super well is it toes the line of a lighthearted Harry Potter film, but then also there's always this sense of something sinister going on. And similar to how this was a turning point for me, this movie was a huge turning point for the franchise. After this, if you've seen all the movies, it gets exponentially darker after this movie, and you can definitely see those tones in this film, because for every lighthearted scene where the friends are just joking around or, giving each other crap, there's another one that is, for 9-year-old me, pretty scary. Some of the visuals in this movie are pretty scary, but for the most part, it's pretty okay for someone of the age that I was whenever I saw this for the first time. And that's actually something that I really appreciate from the director of this movie. Newell really does a great job between balancing what could be like 2 different movies. On one hand, you have Harry, Ron, and Hermione. They're going through teenage drama. They are getting into little fights here and there, as 14-year-olds do whenever they're friends. But then on the other side, Harry is having more and more nightmares, and you are getting the sense that everything is about to change for these characters. But I mean, this movie still does everything that you want from this franchise. The acting, I referred to it earlier, the acting is great. I mean, the three leads are always great in these movies. They obviously know these characters super well. It's their fourth movie doing it. All of the supporting actors are great. Everyone does an incredible job in this movie. But this movie does what I love the most in any Harry Potter movie, and that's it sucks you into the world, into the wizarding world of Harry Potter, and it does not let you go for the 2.5 hours that you watch this. I mean, it just hooks you. Every single scene is critical. Every single scene, you are in there with the characters, with whoever's on screen. And whenever I say not a single moment was wasted in this movie, I mean it. This movie is jam-packed. And the reason why I say that is because Goblet of Fire at the time was the longest Harry Potter book. Up to that point, Prisoner of Azkaban, Chamber of Secrets, Sorcerer's Stone, or Philosopher's Stone, depending on where you are, they were all like a little long, kind of short, like not too bad. But Goblet of Fire was over 700 pages. And something that surprised me whenever I was looking into the development of this movie is that at first, they went to the set just saying, we're going to shoot everything that we want to shoot, and if it ends up being 2 movies, it ends up being 2 movies. It makes me wonder what they left on the cutting room floor, honestly. And just so you know, I haven't read most of the Harry Potter books. I've only read the first 2, but just watching this movie and looking into everything it took to make this movie, the actors and how they play their characters, it makes me want to read the rest of the books because I just want to spend more time in this world. 2.5 hours is not long enough. I honestly think they could have made a 4-hour Harry Potter movie and I would have watched the whole thing without looking at my phone. And they honestly kind of did with Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2. So if you haven't seen the movie up to this point, I'm going to go into more of a deep dive. I'm going to go in depth on a lot of things, so I recommend you turn this video off, you watch the movie, and you should probably watch the first 3 movies as well, and then come back and watch the rest of this video because there are some cool details in here that I'm excited to talk about with everyone. Alright, so now that everyone here has seen Goblet of Fire, which I'm sure is probably most of you, I want to go in depth on some specific things that I love about this movie and why it's in my top 100, and specifically why it beat out a lot of movies at number 100. I mean, whenever I was making this list, the first, 80 movies were movies that I knew for sure had to be there, but then the final 20 were so hard. I left 50 movies on the floor, and I couldn't figure out where to draw the line. And ultimately, it came down to this movie and something else, and I was like, there's no way I can leave this movie out. It's too good at so many things, and plus, whenever you incorporate it with the fact that it was the first Harry Potter movie I'd ever seen in a movie theater, I just had to talk about it. And I mean, I wasn't sorry that I did either, because I watched a bunch of behind-the-scenes footage for this movie, and obviously, in a big movie like this, there's a lot of special effects and a lot of people and a lot of stuff going on, but I don't think I had ever realized everything it took to actually make this movie. And I want to point out a few things that I am just so impressed by. The first thing is the director. Mike Newell was the perfect director for this. Watching Mike Newell direct behind the scenes for this movie was so entertaining because you can tell that he's just such a physical director in that whenever he's trying to direct the teenagers, like the scene whenever Fred and George, jump over Dumbledore's aging hex or whatever it is, and then they turn into old guys and they start to fight. You see Mike Newell in the behind the scenes footage show them how he wants them to fight. So he's on the floor wrestling one of the twins, and it's super funny. At some point he's giving a bunch of teenage girls directions on how to giggle or something, and he really, really does a good job of directing teenagers and getting the most out of their performances. And the reason why I bring him up is I honestly didn't really know who this guy was before I did research on this movie. Obviously, I knew that Chris Columbus directed the first 2 Harry Potter movies. Alfonso Cuarón came in for the 3rd one and did a heck of a job. We'll talk about that later. And then there was a random guy, the 4th, and then David Yates directed the rest of them. But I never really realized just how good of a job this guy did with this movie. And it's not an easy task to direct any huge movie, and so I tip my hat to Mike Newell. But the thing that I like the most from looking behind the scenes of this movie is how they filmed some of these visual effects. And I just have to say, Daniel Radcliffe, you did an amazing job. This dude, whenever you see him falling down the roof of Hogwarts, he is actually falling down a roof. It's indoors and it's not on this giant mountain. But if you look at the video, it's like a pretty decent fall. Like, he could easily hurt himself. And in the dragon pit, whenever he's like jumping around, or there's like an explosion, or there's fire, or there's rocks coming at him, that's Daniel Radcliffe there jumping, like dodging these rocks that they're exploding around him. Like, there's fire right there. And he's like, you know, he obviously has his blocking, so he's got to go in a certain way, and he does it. But I mean, it's just the guts to be able to do that, put yourself in danger. And this dude had to have been like 14 or 15 whenever this was filmed. Like, so just, you know what? Good job, Daniel Radcliffe. I didn't know that you did a lot of stunts before making this video, and now I do. Here is your rose, sir. And then something else that I thought was super interesting was how they filmed the underwater scene, because apparently they tried getting it to where you put the actor upside down and you blow air in their face, but the problem was their hair wasn't moving the way that they needed it to. So what did they do instead? They literally got a giant pool and put the actors in there with a giant blue screen. And the footage is crazy, and the way they shot it was crazy. And honestly, rose again to Daniel Radcliffe, because Daniel Radcliffe spent over 41 hours underwater to shoot that scene. And I mean, the takes that they would do were only between 9 to 11 seconds, because literally in between takes, they have an oxygen tank right there for Daniel. He's putting it over his mouth, getting air, taking direction in his ear from the director in the studio, who can see everything that he's doing in his performance, taking direction, getting oxygen, putting it away, filming another scene, and then on we go. And I mean, wow, like the dedication behind doing something like that, it's amazing. All right, so now that I've talked about some of the behind the scenes things that I like so much, I'm going to get into some of the themes that I like specifically about this movie. One of the aspects that I love about this movie is the fact that it's sort of like a mystery thriller. You don't know who put Harry's name in the Goblet of Fire, and you're trying to figure it out the whole movie. Harry kind of has this sense about him the whole movie that he doesn't really know what's going on. He's constantly relying on the people around him to help him out. You know, Harry, of course, is very resourceful of himself, but he doesn't know who put his name in the Goblet of Fire. And he's getting these visions at night that are making him worried that something bad is about to happen, which we as the viewer obviously know, yeah, Harry, you're in a little bit of trouble. And something else that I really like about this movie is the interpersonal conflicts between the main characters. You know, if you've ever been 14, you know eventually you're going to fight with your friends. It's just kind of what happens at that age. It's all the teenage hormones and whatnot. And you really see that through Harry and Ron in the first half of this movie. Ron is friends with this wizard that everybody knows, and it's been building up for years that Harry's famous, and oh, you're just Harry's friend. And now he thinks that Harry put his name into the Goblet of Fire and didn't at least tell him. So really, Ron throughout this whole movie, very insecure. It sucks. We move on. However, I do want to talk about why Hermione Granger is the best character in this entire movie. Whenever Harry and Ron are having, their little squabble, they're fighting, she serves as like a little intermediary between them because she still cares about both of them. She knows they're friends, they'll make up, I need to be here to support them. Whenever Harry is competing in all of these Triwizard Tournament events, she is very resourceful and helping him wherever she can, whether it be, giving him information or literally just being there for him. And then also props to her, whenever Ron gets mad, she stands up for herself. And then after that scene is done, she moves on. Heck, I mean, even Harry gave Ron crap after they got into their little fight, but Hermione stood up for herself in the moment and then moved on. She let it pass. She made her feelings known to Ron that, like, hey, if you're going to be like this, you better just ask me next time. And man, she is just awesome. Hermione is just continuously resourceful, caring of her friends, supportive, and she stands up for herself. She's not a doormat. She's not going to let Ron talk to her like that. And on that note, I like to just say all the acting is great in this movie, but specifically Emma Watson and Brendan Gleeson are fantastic in this movie. Emma Watson, of course, nails Hermione Granger's character, someone who's just super smart and somehow knows what to do in a lot of situations. It's so hard to act as that character and make them engaging. And Emma Watson pulls it off again. And she's just an incredible actress and she does a great job in this movie. And then Brendan Gleeson has a super hard job of playing a character who is playing a character. And it just reminds me of that scene from Tropic Thunder, saying it like that. But Brendan Gleeson is amazing. Mad-Eye Moody has to be one of my favorite characters in this movie, behind Hermione. Even though he isn't really Mad-Eye Moody in this movie, I'm going to pretend like he is. Scene where he turns Draco Malfoy into a ferret, and Professor McGonagall comes up and is like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Teaching." But yeah, Brendan Gleeson is amazing in this movie. On that note, I want to talk about the individual competition scenes in the Triwizard Tournament. The dragon scene is nothing short of riveting. I was looking into a few differences between the book and the movie, and apparently in the book, the dragon doesn't break free of the chain, and that's something that they added. And I don't know how the scene goes in the book, but I love that addition in the movie because just that moment where the dragon is roaring on Dumbledore's tower is insane. And whenever Harry is trying to, outrun, I guess, the dragon or outfly the dragon on his broom, I was sitting here watching the movie. I've seen this movie so many times. I was sitting here and I was like, "Go, Harry, like go, 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 go." Like I was just sitting here rooting for Harry. And that's just a testament to how good of a scene that really is. And then we get into the underwater scene. I already talked about it more. Whenever I saw the movie for the first time, it was obviously a good scene. The whole movie's good. But after seeing the behind the scenes of what it took to actually make that scene happen, it made me appreciate it a lot more. It might actually be my favorite of the competitions in hindsight, knowing everything that it took to actually make that scene happen. Lastly, the maze. I also read that there were supposed to be more obstacles in the maze, and apparently it was like really tense in the book, and it for sure is my least favorite of the competitions in this. I really wish that they had made it more tense because I just feel like, you see some of the competitors go crazy in the maze, or I guess floors specifically because Victor gets bewitched. And I guess Cedric to a degree goes a little mad, but you're not in the maze long enough, in my opinion, to really make it believable that they would go crazy. Or at least there aren't enough obstacles in their way other than like weeds trying to take them into the maze, which is scary. But really, in my opinion, that's okay because the star of that scene isn't the maze. It's whenever Cedric and Harry get transported to the graveyard. That's the real meat of the scene. That's what you're there for. You are there for the Harry Voldemort confrontation that we've been waiting for 3 movies. And Ralph Fiennes is sinister as Voldemort. Looking at the behind the scenes video, that dude got into character. And he really went for it. Like, I remember sitting there at 9 years old. I hadn't seen a Harry Potter movie yet, and I was watching this movie, and I was like, this is scary. Like, I wonder if the other 3 movies are like this. And Prisoner of Azkaban, to an extent, is it's a different kind of thing. But for 3 movies now, we've had that threat of Voldemort lurking in the shadows, and now he's here. He has his finger on Harry's scar. He can touch him, and he is going to kill him. And something that I love about this scene too is Daniel Radcliffe's acting. Again, the way that he acts Harry in the scene is how anybody would react. Like, what's going on? This guy's supposed to be dead right now, but he's not. And then a major point that I want to hit on in this movie is I love how Harry is just a genuinely good person that wants to help people. Even though he may not have all the answers sometimes, he wants to do what he can to help his friends and to help those around him. Like whenever everyone at school is making fun of him for some reason, and he pulls Cedric aside, who's kind of the popular kid, and he has to act a certain way around everybody, he doesn't let that stop him from warning Cedric, like, hey, the first task is dragons. And that ends up helping Harry later whenever Cedric learns before him how you use the egg for the next task. And then in the second task, he saves Flora's sister's life, and he ends up getting rewarded with second place because he would have ended up getting first if he hadn't stopped there to save her, or at least save Hermione, possibly, because he has 2 friends down there. What's he supposed to do? His first instinct is, oh yeah, I gotta just save Ron. No, Harry Potter wants to save as many people as he can. In the maze, he saves Victor's life whenever Cedric and him had a wand duel, and Cedric don't know what he's about to do to Victor, but it's not going to be anything good. And Harry tells him, like, no, he's bewitched. Like, leave him alone. He's stupefied. Like, leave him be. He can't hurt you anymore, basically. And then after he and Cedric get into a shoving match on the way to the cup, and the maze tries to take Cedric, Harry stops there for a second, and he has a choice between winning the tournament or saving Cedric. He pauses, and he makes the right decision. And after that, Cedric comes back, and basically whenever he and Harry are at the cup, he's willing to just let Harry win. It just goes to show you that if you do good things will happen in return, even though you didn't do the good thing for good things to happen to you, if that makes sense. My only 2 gripes about this movie is, like I said before, the maze scene could have been more engaging or more like stressful, I guess. However, I understand you got to give time to the graveyard scene. That's a great scene. I get it. You got to pick and choose some stuff. Whatever. Only other thing that I didn't really like in this movie was the fact that they tried to kind of allude to the fact that the teacher from, I guess, the Viking school was possibly having something to do with putting Harry's name in the Goblet of Fire. My own personal taste, I would have liked it if it was more of a secret and the audience was left there without inferring anybody, rather than the kind of like, this is the most obvious villain because he used to be a Death Eater, and then, oh, it's not him, it's Mad-Eye Moody, aka Barty Crouch. Barty Crouch? Barty Crouch. I don't remember his exact name, but David Tennant. Those are really the only 2 like issues, I guess, if you could call them, in this whole movie. It's a great Harry Potter movie. You guys know this. You've seen Harry Potter. This is such a great movie. It's a great franchise. It isn't my favorite one, but it's definitely up there. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. What a movie. So at this point of the video, I'm assuming you will have seen Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. What do you think of the movie? What are specific things that you like? Is there anything that I didn't talk about that's like your favorite thing in the movie? Let me know what you think down in the comments, and I'll see you next time for number 99. Bye, guys.